Let's move on. What's the next topic of the week?
Next
We're gonna do
topic
reviews,
is
right?
yes. You are going to talk about the Jedi, Disney Plus's
Tells
Jedi.
a review of a series because sometimes it's hard for me to do a whole series, but luckily for me, Tales of the Jedi, something that I forgot that was coming up, dropped the other day, and it was like 5 or 6 episodes, and they were each like 15 minutes long, and I didn't know what to expect, so I quickly watched the trailer before I watched it, and it seems like it was based on the prequels, during the time of the prequels, the Clone Wars and stuff like that. Oh wow, Roku's popping back on again. Let me. It seems like this is all the things that were happening during that time that we didn't see. Why is Count Dooku such a dick? What did Ahsoka do after when she first became? So it starts off with like episode 1. It shows how Ahsoka was found out by her people to be a Jedi. It was a beautiful story on when she was a baby and they discovered that she had Jedi powers. Ahsoka is my favorite Jedi. She's my all-time favorite character, and I'm looking forward to the Ahsoka movie that's going to be played by Ahsoka series that's going to be played by Rosario Dawson. So going into the history of Ahsoka and learning about her, how she became a part of the Jedi Order, and then in the beginning of her training with, or more into her training with Anakin Skywalker and things like that. It was great to fill in those gaps. It was also good to learn a little bit about Count Dooku, who we were introduced to in the Clone Wars movie, and it turns out he was the master of Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson, which we all, us Star Wars geeks, knew because that's what they said it was. But then we saw the young Qui-Gon Jinn getting trained. We saw Count Dooku being like going over the edge. Like he balanced and he struggled with himself to. He was one of those guys who thought that the Jedi Order and the way that we were doing things in the Senate and all that stuff, it wasn't really working for the people. Why he chooses the total opposite, joining the dark side, would make sense to in opposition. That doesn't make sense to me? But we learn a little bit about the things that pushed him over the edge. I won't go into too many spoilers about it. But one thing I did think when watching this series was, as I fixed the TV behind me, this should have been what the Phantom Menace was about. We should have got a full Count Dooku, because we all know that Count Dooku, and it's not a Count Dooku story, it's a Skywalker story. But to see Count Dooku turn to the dark side, and you would probably assume he was the one really pulling all the strings, and then learning who Darth Sidious and all that stuff was. I feel like everything that we saw in this should have been all that we saw with Count Dooku in this, with his fight with the other Yoda-like character Yaddle and stuff like that, and I'll go into that a little bit later. But everything that we saw in this should have been in that movie, is my opinion. It should have been at least the first act or the first act and a half of the Phantom Menace, and then the rest that we actually got should have been the second act and to the third act of that movie, and then leading into everything that we saw in Attack of the Clones, and then the Rise of the Sith. That was the only thing I kept thinking when I was watching this. This should have been in there. Obviously, it probably wasn't written. Maybe George Lucas did have it in his mind. He always claims that he has it all up in his head. He was probably lying. But it would have, to me, made it a way better movie. It made going back and thinking about what we saw in those movies and learning a little bit more about that character, or you seeing a younger version, it made it 10 times better. And I was like, this should have been the movie. It played perfectly. And then it should have led into Qui-Gon Jinn becoming a master of his own, getting Obi-Wan Kenobi as his Padawan, and them finding Anakin Skywalker, and then that should have been the second half of the act of the movie throughout to the third act. Cut out that. I know the pod race scene was awesome, but it was not necessary. Cut it out. We could have seen Darth. What was his name? I forgot his Darth name, but we could have seen Count Dooku in this epic fight with another Yoda-like character, Yaddle. The female Yoda, Yaddle, was in this, and we finally learned a little bit more about her character and saw her in action. And everybody that I've seen on the internet agrees that her scene was the best, and I agree. Her fight scene was awesome. We still didn't learn anything about the Yoda character, like what planet are they from, whether they're people called and stuff like that. They're still keeping that shit a secret, which is weird, but it was still fine. But overall, learning a little bit more about the Ahsoka character, her history, the Count Dooku character, this was a perfect little quick binge. I recommend it. I'm probably going to watch it all again. It was, 2 hours out of my day? It was like 5 episodes, 15 minutes long each, about an hour and a half out of my day. What was it, 2 o'clock in the morning? I didn't go to bed. I was watching it while I was keeping you up at night, my bad. But it was good. And I definitely recommend, if you want to peel back the onion and learn a little bit more about the Count Dooku character, a little bit more about my favorite character, Ahsoka, this was a great story. So I highly recommend it. So let me know what you guys thought about the Tales of the Jedi. Let's talk a little bit more about it. I'm gonna watch it again. Maybe this is my official review on it. I totally recommend it. Everything that I saw was, to me, perfect delivery. And the only thing I'm upset about is the fact that should have been a movie. That should have been in the prequels. It would have made the prequels 10 times better. Let me know what you think about my assessment of that, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later on in your comment section. So put it in the box below. Let me know what you guys think.